it's just a mindset I had developed over time that was just like, okay, you've got a plan, you set the big goal, you've got to plan out checkpoints along the way. I can't win a 100-mile race at once. All I can do is do the first 5 miles. So pick an intermediate checkpoint, get there, and move to the next one. And all along the way, you've got to be ready to adapt. That is the biggest thing in life, in business, is that it's never going to go the way you planned it. So you just have to accept that. And now you've got a new reality, whatever it is. And you just have to reset and say, okay, this is the plan now. Now I'm going to do this.
We spend our lives trying to eliminate friction. We want easier, faster, more comfortable. But what if comfort is actually the thing keeping us from becoming who we're capable of becoming? Today's guest helped build one of the world's most recognizable endurance brands. He survived business failures, economic downturns, impossible growth, and even cancer. His newest book is called Becoming Spartan. And today we're exploring why the greatest growth in life almost always begins where comfort ends. Let's dive in. Welcome back to another episode of the Perpetual Growth Podcast. I'm your host, Zac Palmer. This show is about growth, not just growing a business, but growing your mindset, your leadership, your health, your relationships, and ultimately the life you build. Today's guest knows a thing or two about building under pressure. Brian Duncanson is an entrepreneur, financial coach, MBA, and one of the co-founders behind Spartan Race, a movement that grew from a bold idea into one of the largest endurance brands in the world. Over more than 2 decades, he's helped build companies, lead through uncertainty, overcome personal adversity, and recently captured those lessons in his newest book, Becoming Spartan, leveraging friction to forge, scale, and outlast. Today, we're talking about entrepreneurship, leadership, resilience, purpose, and why the obstacles we try hardest to avoid may actually become our greatest competitive advantage. Brian, welcome to the show.
Zac, great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I'm excited to have you today, Brian. Now, Brian, most people hear Spartan and they immediately think obstacle races. Now, you hear Spartan and you think mindset. What's the difference?
Well, the obstacle race is the product, but the mindset is really the transformation. And, it was something we maybe stumbled onto somewhat unintentionally as we created the product, but we learned very quickly that people were going through something when they were participating in the obstacle races. And it wasn't just about getting to that line. We had, the first race, people crawling through the mud. They didn't even know what it was. We were trying to convince people that, yeah, it's okay to jump over stuff and under barbed wire, throw this spear, all these crazy things. And we thought it was fun. But when we got to the end and started talking to people, it started meaning something to them. And very quickly, people started sending us emails and messages about that it was really changing their life. It really reset their perspective. And that was something a little unexpected for us, I think, initially. But we have leaned into it as we've grown.
That's so interesting. I never would have thought of that. I mean, I started my past life 17 years in the health and wellness industry and did my share of Spartan races and of course the knockoffs. And it was an incredible experience. And as you started to share that, I didn't really think about it, but at the time I was going through some different challenges in life, and there was a component I think that was unspoken to me that was proving something within yourself. I mean, your book starts with a really powerful premise. I mean, that the world has become addicted to frictionless living. I mean, why do you believe comfort has become one of the biggest threats to growth? And I got to tell you, bro, like I wholeheartedly agree to this premise. I virtually every day speak with countless different clients, business owners, individuals, and one of the things you'll hear me say frequently is comfort is the enemy. Because if we're coasting, we're going downhill. It's new level, new devil. So, I mean, in your mind, why do you believe comfort has become one of the biggest threats to growth?
Well, I guess we start on the physical side because, again, we were really into personal transformation. Our DNA, as I go through in the book, is rooted in adventure racing. And adventure racing was, back in the early 2000s, late 1990s, early 2000s, was sort of a boom. And it was this crazy endurance event that it looked like you had to be superhuman to do. But what you found is once you got into it, it recalibrated your limits. So
Hmm.
again, I was that guy. I had a corporate job in sales, software sales, traveling around, doing dinners, drinking, playing golf on the weekends. And it was becoming unfulfilling. And then I got latched on to adventure racing, and it just completely changed my perspective of what was possible of me physically. And it became a center point of my life, a focal point of training and dieting and, really living that sort of lifestyle. And it's what eventually led me to meet Joe DeSena, who was coincidentally going through the same journey,
Mm.
unbeknownst to me. And we eventually crossed paths and we got together, and that's what lit the fuse. And so that is the DNA that then seeded the Spartan product. And again, initially there was a competitor out there called Warrior Dash, and they were putting on just fun events. It was a fun mud run, get dirty and drink beer and party afterward. They had live bands and everything.
Yeah.
But they were getting incredible crowds to this event. And so it was, we looked at that and said, okay, there's a business opportunity to take that, but add this element of challenge, of grit, to push people past their comfort zone. And it turned out that it's exactly what people were looking for.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I mean, it's so interesting how often in business and life, something starts with an idea, but the reason that we think people are going to want it and that it's going to work is not the real impetus. It's not
Yeah.
the real driving force. And recognizing that evolution through your personal experience, even that, I mean, how how has that shaped the way that you guys now approach Spartan, the conversations that you're having with the individuals that are participating in the races? And what it means for them after. I'm really curious to hear some of more of these stories. Whether it's from your personal experience perspective and just the overall evolution. Like, I'll put it this way: like everyone sees the finish line. Very few people understand the first few years of business with Spartan races. I mean, take us back. What did
Yeah.
Spartan actually look like before the success, and what nearly broke it?
So we go back to it was a cafe in Hartford, Connecticut in December. It was a day after Christmas of 2009. And Joe was still, he's a Wall Street trader. And so he was en route from New York City up to his property in Vermont. And I was in Connecticut. We stopped and we met at this cafe. And he had the vision. He had gone to visit Warrior Dash to try to do a cooperative deal with them, and they weren't interested. So he said he wanted to do it on his own. And at the time, he had an event called, and he still has it, called the Death Race. Now, the Death Race is kind of, think of it as an unscripted trial. It's like Navy SEAL training for, 3 days straight, basically, with unscripted events coming at you, unscripted challenges. Everything from chopping wood to climbing mountains to translating languages through a dictionary. Um, so he wanted to take sort of that vision and the adventure racing DNA and squash it into a more mass market style event. And we had Warrior Dash as sort of another indicator of directionally where to go. So anyway, we beat it up. He's like, okay, $100,000 is what I'm putting in. I want 10 events next year. This is December now. He wants 10 events in 2010 and go. Like that was it. And I was like, the first few months were just a lot of battling. Like your format's not going to work. We can't put enough people through it. We are never going to get 10 events. We have to convince people, landowners to let us come in, build on their property. We want to light a fire. We want to tear it up and have some mud. People are like, what do you thought we were crazy. So the first 5 months was a mad, mad sprint of think of everything you have to do for a product launch
Hmm.
and compress it really into 4 months because after the meeting, after in Hartford, we argued for the next 4 weeks before any work really got done. So we were down to 4 months, but I found a venue, found a location. We argued about the brand. It took us a little while to settle in on Spartan as the brand. There was a whole brainstorming session there. But it gave us this very rich background story, as well as sort of aligned with our mental DNA, our toughness DNA. But we had to build a website. There was no Facebook ads back then. So like you literally had to be on Facebook one at a time. I'd have to go, hey, Zac,
Yeah.
check this out. And you'd be like, what the heck are you talking about? I don't know what you mean. And this would go on again and again. So we had to do the marketing. We had to figure out what the product was and get it all built. But we did it. And we had our first event in Vermont that May,
Wow.
4 to 5 months after the initial meeting.
Hmm.
And I think it's a key, one of the key lessons I came back to, I think again and again in the book is it's sort of this ready, fire, aim people like to sort of say, but I
Hmm.
think it's not just being reckless necessarily in going fast, but it is using time to market and the ability to have an interaction with your customers quickly and
Yeah.
get feedback and adapt to it. That really, I think, helped us because we learned a ton where if we had sat in a conference room for 8 months doing business plans and strategizing and blah blah blah, we wouldn't have had any of that feedback. As
Yeah.
well as we were, there was other players in the market, so
Yeah.
we're ceding ground in the war while we're sitting around making up a battle plan, that perfect plan.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's a big lesson for me. We really went fast and we learned and we adapted. The product became different each iteration that we did. And our product kind of naturally lended to it because we were going to have an event in May, then another one in June, and then two more in July, et cetera. So we were able to have these large interactions and get the feedback going immediately. So, but it was, I mean, we didn't have we only had like 3 full-time staff, bunch of interns, a bunch of friends who were helping us out initially. You do whatever you can in the beginning to strap it all together, and then you lose money. Like you have to be ready to lose money. And again, like I think everybody likes to create pretty business plans on spreadsheets, but when the rubber meets the road, man, you got to be ready for some pain and be ready to adapt to that pain as it comes.
Yeah, I mean, great principle in the race itself and in business and in life. I mean, adapt and overcome. And what I love about this is, I mean, you guys started with a big, hairy, audacious goal. It wasn't like, oh yeah, let's get 1, 2, 3 races done over the next year. Let's do 12. And I think one of those things that tends to happen is when we compress time and we don't get stuck in ideation and we don't get stuck in analysis paralysis. It's like, look, number one most important thing is the reality is the best laid plans aren't going to work 90% of the time. So the best thing we can do is come up with that strategy, execute, and then have the humility to ask great questions and learn in the process and implement. One of the challenging things I think as a business owner can becoming knowing what to actually shift and execute on. Because it's one thing to get great feedback, it's a whole nother thing to determine what pieces of those feedback are actually going to move the needle forward and transform the overall experience.
Yeah.
So fascinating paradigm because yeah, what also relates to me is like one of my favorite books from this last year is the book 10x is easier than 2x. And simple fundamental principle. It takes the same amount of time, effort, energy to build a $10 million business as it does a $1 million business. Only thing is the only thing that differentiates the two is the questions that we ask and the subsequent things that we act upon. But the firm foundation is all built on action. We have to have an idea, we have to start executing on it, and then we've got to be willing to adapt. Now, this segues perfectly because I mean your subtitle isn't just surviving friction, it's leveraging it. I mean, how did you guys actually leverage adversity as fuel as you were going through that first year and those first dozen events?
Well, the product itself is friction. We
Right.
specialize in it. We found that, uh, you know, marketing to, say, 5K runners was actually really difficult because a 5K runner, shows up, they got their tight, their sneakers, their clean sneakers, their clean clothes on. They run on a nice roadway. They come in, people give them water, give them, praise, all this stuff. And we were kind of the opposite. We were like, nope, you're not going to get any of that stuff. It is going to be hard. We're upfront about it. Like, it's going to be difficult. Maybe you shouldn't do it. Maybe it's not for you. And that was sort of a big shift in the way it was approached. And what it does is it provides a filter that the people who make it through then become brand advocates. Like, they now feel like they're part of a club because they climbed this figurative and literal wall to be on the inside. They did something, they accomplished something to get on the inside that was personal to them. And it's that piece, I think, is so critical, where there's so much effort today to like give away this for free and give that away for free. It's like, well, if you get it for free, you assign no value to it. Your customer's going to assign no value to it as well.
Hmm.
If you give them some hurdles to jump over in a positive way, and then there's a meaningful end to that, then you've got a brand ambassador for you, and that person's worth their weight in gold.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's a great reminder, metaphorically and literally, the obstacle is the way.
Yeah.
I think it's
Yeah. So,
true in the race, it's true in life.
well, and then again, it provided us some challenge. So a lot of people, look, there was, I would say, 30% of the crew that would come in were all in, and they loved it. And now they started becoming repeat customers. 70% would come once, try it, and be like, that was really hard. It's not for me, whatever. So it caused us to have to do a little bit of innovation. One of those things for us was we created what was called the trifecta medal. So over time, we continued to ramp it up. Our first product was our sprint product, which was a 3 mile, like a 5K with obstacles. The second year, we came out with a 10K version, 6 miles. We doubled it with more obstacles. And then even later that year, we came out with what we called the Beast, which was half marathon, 13 miles, and we put it on the Killington ski mountain. So there's no way you weren't doing a lot of running for half of the race. You were just climbing up the ski hills, okay? So we kept ramping. Instead of making things easier, we kept adding friction. We kept making it harder. And what we did then was we created a separate award that you could earn if you did one of each of those three. Because what we found was in the data was that once you did two events, you were much more likely to stay with the product for long term. So we
Mhm.
just had to get people past that one and done status into the long term. So we set up this, reward system that any video game has nowadays, but back then was kind of unique. That there was this journey you could take, and that there was an extra reward at the end. And then we celebrated these people. We made up a towel at the end of the year, put everybody's name on it who had earned it. So you really create a way to have your customer come back to you again and again.
Yeah, so fundamentally important. I mean, from the very beginning, you guys didn't just build a list of participants, you built advocates.
Right.
It's like the people that are going to do this and say that was great, I did it once, that was too hard. And then there's people that get a thirst for more because they understand the impact that it's going to have on their life on a more global level. I mean, what a beautiful gift. And then you also, I love that where you're thinking forward about, how do we create those dopamine hits? How do we create that buy-in, that reward system that gets people to want to keep coming back for more? And people tend to surround themselves with people like themselves. So if we
Right.
know that they're going to come back for more, guess what? People like to bring their friends. So I mean, it's a great way to build a community and a culture around the entire experience. I mean, you don't build a global movement without leading through uncertainty. What would you say is the hardest leadership lesson Spartan taught you?
Well, for me, again, my relationship with Joe was the visionary, the dreamer, the pusher. Any audacious goal, he would 10x it. He's like, "Oh, that's cute, but I want it up here." And so that pushed me. As not my nature. I'm, by my background, I was a software engineer. I'm a thinker. I want to make the system work.
Hmm.
And so it took that relationship, which I categorize as positive friction. We were frequently at odds in meetings and in discussions about the way to proceed, but recognizing that positive friction was there, and he understanding what I brought to the table and being able to take the vision and make it actually work in the real world. And what I understood of him pushing us and the organization forward as hard as he could, as fast as he could, really made it work. So that to me was the biggest takeaway. I've always been, I think, humble about knowing what I know and also knowing what I don't know, and allowing experts in those areas to plug in and seek out help. It's a lesson I learned back in the adventure racing days. Like at some point on a 3-day race, you are going to need help. And you need to
Yeah.
be able to look at your teammates and ask for that help and be willing to accept it. It's one thing, everybody thinks of themselves as the hero, and that you're going to be the one like, yeah, I'm there for you. I'm going to help you. But it's a whole lot different exercise to be self-aware and humble enough to say, I'm the one that needs help right now, and I'll be there for you later when you need it, but I need it right now. So anyway, we
Mm.
had this friction. So I think that's to me, um, I'll give you an example. We had the 2011, our second year, we had an event planned in Massachusetts, and that's when Hurricane Irene came up and slammed into the Northeast on the weekend of the event. So we were shut down. We were, the emergency declaration. We can't have the event. And Joe's like, I'm going. And we're like, what do you mean you're going? He's like, I'm going. Send out an email and tell anybody who wants to show up that I'll go do a workout with them. Because he didn't want people to be disappointed. As people had been training and looking forward to it, and it was going to get wiped out. So we showed up, and there was close to 50 people who came out. And in the middle of the storm, they basically did a group workout up and down the mountain and over the obstacles that were there, totally clandestine. And that actually, because of that, it born a new product that we still to this day call the Hurricane Heat, where you can sign up before the race to come out and do this group workout effectively with like-minded people, just to squeeze a little bit more out of the experience of your weekend.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, again, you talk about overcoming adversity, taking something that most people would be like, oh, well, it's over. Guess we're gonna have to move on to the next one. You guys are like, let's turn it into something great. I mean, tell me this. Like everyone talks about starting businesses. Very few talk about surviving long enough to actually build one. I mean, how do you, in your mind, uh, build something that outlasts trends?
Well, you've got to have that customer loyalty.
Hmm.
So you've got to figure out a way to make your customers, as we just discussed, become advocates. But then this innovation. So I think I've already told you that, we started our product when we launched the business was a 3-mile race with obstacles. That was it. Okay. Today, we have 20 different products. So we kept innovating because we were listening to our customers, looking at the market, and understanding that it's fine. Like this one thing is not going to get us through our lives. The next, the next big friction point, I think, came in 2013. I got a call from the Boston Red Sox, Fenway Park staff, and they wanted to have an event outside the park. They saw obstacle racing as becoming pretty big, and they thought if we set up some obstacles with Fenway Park as the backdrop, on the Lansdowne Street, that it would be cool. So I went there and I wasn't that excited about the concept. And then I looked down the street, there was a line of people. They're waiting. And I was like, what are those people doing? There's no game. There's no game that day. And he said, oh, that's the tour. So literally people will go and pay $40 to just be led around the park. They just wanted to be inside the park and hear about the history of the park. So I said, let's go inside the park. And I figured out that we could get the event inside the park, that we could run up and down the stairs, through the seats, down around the warning track. They had some back area. We could make it work. But this was different. There's no mud, there's no woods. Our whole product was something completely different. And we had many arguments about whether or not this was the same thing and whether or not our fans would accept it. But we did it. And I mean, it was a huge business risk because the rental fee, you could imagine, to rent out Fenway Park for the whole day is massive, probably 10x what we normally pay for an outdoor venue. But my feeling was that it was going to market itself. People are already willing to pay money just to walk through it. So to be able to come there and have a cool race experience combined. And it worked. We had close to 8,000 people our first year in
Wow.
Fenway, and it launched what became the Stadium Series. So we have now put on events in 15 different stadiums throughout the US and internationally. They have done it as well, Mexico, France, UK, etc. And Fenway Park remains still one of the most attended events of the year for Spartan to this day. So it became an annuity. So you just
Amazing.
had to really, if you want to outlast, you've got to continue to innovate, to build things, and be willing to grow as the customer changes, especially in the fitness space. So it's
Oh
very
yeah.
trend based, as you know.
Yeah, yeah, very much so. One thing I'm curious about, Ryan, is I have to imagine, but I don't want to assume, is when you talk about having 20 different products, I would imagine that there's the diehards that no matter what you guys put on, wherever you go, they're going to be there, and they're going to be showing up and participating in the events. However, I would also anticipate that you have customer segmentation relative to each of those products because you know that some people are going to be more attracted to some style of event versus another. And I imagine a lot of that came back to that data collection. I mean, how did you talk a little bit more about that segmentation between those events and how you started to curate this product suite relative to the different types of personalities that wanted to participate, but they just would enjoy one experience more than another? And am I even on track with that assumption, or is that not exactly
Well,
the case?
some of it you stumble again, like the stadium race, the first Fenway event came up sort of serendipitously because
Mhm.
they contacted us and had a completely different idea and we molded it. But what we found out about it, because we survey after every race, and what we learned out of that was there was a whole new segment of people that came to this event. They're basically city dwellers.
Mhm.
And I mean, there are people who are afraid of going in the woods. They've lived their whole lives in cities and things. And the notion of driving out of the city into the woods and, running through mud is just something that was not a way in for them. This opened up a new door and allowed them to come in. The same thing happened during the pandemic. All right. So we're in the live event business. So imagine that, right? 2020 shut down. I mean, we're dead.
Mhm.
There were layoff furloughs, um, just holding our heads in our hand, like we're not going to survive this thing. And we had a new product that was this hybrid fitness model product. And what we did was we said, okay, they were starting to open up and allow small crowds in the gyms. So we said, okay, how can we take this product, which was envisioned for a large scale conference center, and package it in a box and ship it to a gym owner so that they could execute it. And that's what became DECA, which is our newest product. which is a hybrid fitness competition. So there's a version now of that product that sits inside of our gym affiliates. And those gym affiliates, as it turned out, have always been our main lead generator for all of our events. Because if you're already active and going to a gym, particularly a functional fitness gym like CrossFit or F45, that type of style, you're 100% in our wheelhouse for coming out and doing a Spartan event.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how we innovated that. We built up a network of gym affiliates. And then once we were allowed back in 2021 to start having large events again, we had this base already built, and it's a feeder system for the larger events. But again, we have an audience segment that comes to that is just a very sort of traditional gym-based member. And we're having a hard time still converting them sometimes over to the outdoor events. And again, but our traditionalists, our Spartan, I mean, we sell season passes. We sold an Unbreakable pass coming out of the pandemic, which was like basically a lifetime pass. Give us some money because we need it to survive. And if you do, you can run anything, anywhere, anytime. And we have a segment of those people who did it, and they come to everything.
Wow.
Yeah.
What a brilliant idea. And again, another great example of overcoming adversity. I know I distinctly recall that season in business when COVID shut the world down, and I was building these pods for our indoor training facilities so that we could create that segmentation between individuals and they could still come in. And I won't get into all the data, but the main thing was, we all had to find ways to adapt and overcome in a particularly challenging season for the fitness industry, for many businesses and industries. I mean, for you guys, that was such an interesting innovation, because it's really easy to just let your mind shut down. But again, obviously in many cases, the obstacle is the way. I also love that you found a way to springboard out of it by offering this lifetime pass system. And what I'm really curious about is, you said something that I'm curious if it was actually a core component of the messaging, which was, look, we need this cash flow to survive. Was that actually something you guys were transparent about up front and just said, look, we've come through a tough season and we want to offer this lifetime pass to create that springboard so we can move into the next level and continue to provide these events? Or what did that messaging look like to your customer base as you were transitioning out of the COVID years and offering this new product?
This is a great point. We have always tried to be very real. All of us that started the business were racers ourselves. We were the people going to mass events, doing races, triathlons, adventure races, these types of things. And it was just our core belief that, and I think this should stand for almost every business owner, that just be honest with your customers. Like, they kind of know it. And it's easier and easier today to sniff out the bullshit, and people don't like it. So literally, even think about it. The event model is you sell events that are in the future. So people are paying money today for something that's happening several months from now, potentially. So when the final shutdown happened in March of 2020, a lot of people had paid money in. And we were very transparent. We just said, look, we understand it. Said, if this money, this $100 or whatever it is critical to you and your survival, we'll give it back. But if you can hang with us, let it help us survive, because we're going to want to be there together on the other side. So it was very straightforward. And it was a mix. There were people who were like, please give me my money. I need it. And we did. And then there were others who were like, I get it. I'm with you. I'll wait it out and see what happens.
Yeah.
So yes. So yeah, we've always been, as best we can, transparent like that.
Yeah. Firm believer that vulnerability and transparency is a superpower when executed properly. We talk about surviving in business. You also mentioned surviving cancer. I mean, how did that experience change your definition of success? Did it change how you lead, how you prioritize, how you love? I mean, talk a little bit about that experience and the influence that it had on your life.
Yeah. So in 2014. We were 4 years into the business. Again, just going through super rapid growth, and it was nonstop all the time. And still don't really know the reason, but I basically went to a dentist visit for a regular cleaning one morning in January, and my gum started bleeding uncontrollably during the cleaning. And they said, this doesn't look right. You need to go get a blood test done. So went and got it done, and the results came back that I had AML, which is acute myeloid leukemia.
Wow.
And with my numbers the way they were, there was not great prognosis initially. They basically told me, yeah, you should go to the hospital today. So that turned into a 6 month, battle, basically, in and out of the hospital, chemotherapy. I eventually got a stem cell transplant. But my mindset, because I sort of been through been sort of hardened in the adventure racing world, endurance training, and then all the years with Spartan, even the first couple of days, I'm like, oh, bring me my laptop. I'm going to be here with nothing else to do. And as long as I can stand and be functional, I'm going to work. In fact, I didn't tell anybody at work for probably 3 weeks. First of all, because I didn't even know. I had no idea what the outcome was going to be. So I didn't know what to tell them. If I was going to have to, tell them it was all over, or it was no big deal, whatever. So I just kept working. And it's just a mindset I had developed over time that was just like, okay, like this, you've got a plan, you set the big goal, you've got to plan out checkpoints along the way. So all I can do, I can't win a 100-mile race all at once. All I can do is do the first 5 miles. So pick an intermediate checkpoint, get there, celebrate it, and move to the next one. And all along the way, you've got to be ready to adapt. That is the biggest thing in life, in business, is that it's never going to go the way you planned it. So you just have to accept that. And now you've got a new reality, whatever it is. And you just have to reset and say, okay, this is the plan now. Now I'm going to do this. And you just keep moving forward, in that fashion. And that's sort of the way I got through it. So I think it was, the mindset I had built up really helped me. It didn't really change me too much, in the immediate aftermath. I mean, it took 3 years before the doctors were comfortable saying that I was cured.
Mm-hmm.
I received a stem cell transplant from a donor, and that took hold in a positive way. And, that's kept me cancer free now for 12 years.
Wow. Wow.
But it was kind of like, I think about it once in a while, but I was intent not to dwell on it. It was like, okay, that happened. So, there's always, I think we all go through those times of, do I just go crazy and light it on fire today? Or how much do I have to be responsible and plan for the future?
Mm-hmm.
And, I try to find a good balance of doing both. I just make sure that I go out and do things that are rewarding personally to me. And I still work as hard as I can for the business.
Yeah. Yeah. What I find so fascinating about your approach to life and business sounds like, a perfect metaphor for how you approach a race. It's like we've got our target, our destination, our end goal, and then we've got each segment of the race, each new obstacle that we've got to overcome. And then the most important piece is we never know what's happening next. So we have to be willing to adapt and overcome. And I think surrender to life's current circumstances, because very rarely is a plan going to execute exactly how we saw it coming. So that willingness to accept what is and figure out the next best plan to get us back on track is really a great approach to life in general. I mean, in business, I mean, in every context. So thank you for sharing that, Brian. One thing I'm curious about is, I'd love to hear your perspective on your dynamic with Joe. I mean, what did Joe DeCina teach you that most people never see?
Well, his work ethic is unparalleled. He comes into a room and shouts things out, sort of classic movie style, crazy CEO, whatever, do this, do this, do this. But there's, even back when he was adventure racing a lot, was never the fastest guy,
Mhm.
but he was never going to quit. You could put your money on him crossing whatever finish line that he put in front of himself. So it was this tenacity that he brought to it that I don't know that a lot of people get to see or interact with. It oozes out of the brand and the products. And I think that's why people identify so strongly with it. And, if he shows up to an event, people treat him like kind of like the rock star he is. Um, they know that he understands it, that he's living it. He's not just preaching it. We had a guy, and this happened early on as well. There was a guy, Chris Davis, who came to one of our events in Atlanta in 2011. He was 700 pounds.
Wow.
Now, the fact that he came to the event meant he was already on a journey to change his life. He knew he was on a bad path. He took him all day to do the course. It was just a 3 mile course, but he did the whole thing. It took him all day. Um, and when he crossed the finish line, Joe was there, and he said, "If you want to keep coming on this journey, move up to my house in Vermont, and I'll help you." And so, like, this was not about like convincing Chris that he needed to buy another ticket to another event. It was like he was genuinely interested in changing this guy's life, and he did. He went up there and lost over 400 pounds
Wow.
over the next year. So, that to me is Joe in a nutshell. He really he he puts it where his talk, his walk matches his talk.
Yeah. Yeah. So fundamentally important. I mean, it's not just about the business, it's about the people that we serve. That's a great reminder. I mean, I'm curious on that note, and maybe this pertains to it, maybe it doesn't, but what's one belief you've you've completely changed your mind about, whether it be through the process of Spartan, the races themselves, through business, through overcoming cancer? Is there something that has completely transformed a particular belief that's become a new foundation to everything that you've built and who you've become today?
I think about it the other way around. I feel like I had stumbled onto it earlier through the adventure racing when I was doing that, and it was about all the things we've sort of hit on here. The commitment to something in the future. So
Mhm.
you've got a goal, you've got to get there. It focuses your mind. You've got to start training if you know you're going to do a 3-day race through the woods. Like you can't just show up.
Mhm.
So you've got to prepare. You've got to be ready.
Mhm.
Uh, Adventure racing was almost always done in teams. So you've got to pick your teammates right. I talk about it in the book, call it a black hole filter. It's like letting the right people in, whether it's your team, your racing team, or your business organization, not just hiring because the person's got the skill on the resume, but do they fit? Do they fit with your mission? Do they believe in what your mission is? And then having the plan and pushing yourself past what's possible. Because the first time you show up to do a 3-day race, obviously there's always a first time. Like you have no idea if you can do it or not, but you challenge yourself to do this new thing. You've reset the bar, and most people accomplish it. And you go, okay, what was I afraid of? What was I worried about all along?
Mhm.
It's kind of like um, I can do this if I just am willing to put in the work, grind away, and as you said, it'll be in races and like your bike chain breaks. Okay, we'll fix it. Or you get a flat tire, we'll fix it. I've been in races where we've had 3 people and 3 bikes, and the race organizers take one of the bikes away and say, well, now you've got to proceed with just 2 bikes. Okay, It's our new situation now. Just deal with it and move on. So I think we wanted to take that kind of mindset and apply it to, a society which we could clearly see was getting more and more vested into at the time. Video games were really sort of the poison of the time, if you will. And now it's just you can just see it progressing as more and more, again, automation that's happening. Um, and the ability, instead of getting up and going, you have to go get dinner. Like, you used to have to get out of your bed, off your couch, walk down the street and go buy something. And now you got DoorDash. It's like, okay, it's great when it's convenient, but like, if all of life becomes like that, it really just creates a situation that is not sustainable in my
Yeah. Yeah. No, I wholeheartedly agree. I think there's a fine line between convenience and complacency in general. I mean, if we're using that time effectively to really be able to focus on the things that we want, love, and enjoy, and stay active in mind, body, and spirit, I think it can be a great tool and resource. But if it's just a means to spending more time sitting our asses on the couch, it doesn't really help build any kind of joy
Right.
or fulfillment in any way, shape, or form. I mean, Brian, as we wrap up today's episode, if everyone listening could adopt just one Spartan principle tomorrow, one that would dramatically change the trajectory of their life, what do you believe that would be?
You've got to pick. You got to pick a goal. You got to pick something. And again, this shameless plug for Spartan is to pick a race, right? You put a race on the calendar and go register for it. Like, it becomes that goal that it just creates a focus. And you can do this in business too. You're going to launch a business. Okay. I was going to take a year to launch it. Well, launch it in 6 months. Just make that your goal and put that on the table. You got to really challenge yourself to to goal setting. And again, be big about it. I'm fine with, like, you want to be president of the United States, like, make that your goal, but understand there's probably a whole bunch of steps along the way. So start figuring those out and then make them happen. So, like, I think it's about taking action, setting a goal and taking action. And again, don't be afraid to fail. There's learnings when you fail. I have a whole chapter in the book, or a whole section in the book, on things that we tried and that just didn't work out. Uh,
Yeah.
so, like, you've got to be willing to fail, to learn from the failure, pull the plug early if things aren't working, and pour gasoline on the thing that is working.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I'm a firm believer that we never fail. We either learn or we succeed, Just- which all dictates what we do next. I mean, if I had to leave everyone with five lessons from today's conversation, one, comfort is rarely where growth happens. The obstacle often becomes the opportunity. Second would be resilience isn't built during easy seasons. It's forged when everything seems to be working against you. Third, great companies aren't built by avoiding friction. They're built by solving meaningful problems through it. Fourth, leadership is not about having all the answers. It's really about remaining steady when everyone else is uncertain. And lastly, becoming Spartan is not about finishing races. It's really about becoming the kind of person who refuses to quit. Now, Brian, you've packed decades of business, leadership, and life lessons into becoming Spartan, leveraging friction to forge, scale, and outlast. Where can everyone find the book, connect with you, and continue learning from your work?
Yep. The book's on sale kind of everywhere. So Barnes and Noble, Amazon. It's out in hardcover, paperback. It's on audio now, on Audible, and Kindle as well. Ebook, you can get ebook versions. So you can find it everywhere. You can find me on LinkedIn, probably the easiest way. Or if you want to email me at brian@spartan.com. Always happy to chat up and share experiences and maybe meet some people out at a race.
Beautiful. Thank you, Brian. And we'll make sure that we have for all of our listeners all of the links in the show notes. Now, one thing that really stood out to me today, most of us spend our lives asking, how do I make this easier? Maybe the better question is, why is this challenge trying, or what is this challenge trying to build inside of me? Because the strongest people, the strongest businesses, the strongest relationships are not created in comfort. They're created in friction. Brian, thank you so much for joining us. And to our audience, I mean, if you guys enjoyed today's conversation, please subscribe, leave us a review, and share this episode with someone who needs the reminder that difficult seasons don't define us, they develop us. Now, until next time, keep growing, keep learning, keep leading, and remember, comfort creates convenience, but friction creates character. We'll see you next time. Brian, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Zac.